All right, let's get going. I'm Nathan Freitas, and I should turn off that banner at the bottom. Coming to you here Friday, February 7th, 2025. And I'm excited to be able to share some work that is funded privately by the Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, as well as other work we've done in the past with groups like witness.org and even the Night News Foundation on preservation of verifiable photos and videos and other essential important information that you want to keep and need to keep around for a long time. The work that I'm sharing is on our Proof Mode website that you will see here. Well, maybe I can do this. There we go. If you go to proofmode.org/preserve, you can find all the information about this process and how to replicate it yourself. So the idea here is, I know in the news, and first of all, hope everyone is finding a way forward to keep doing the important work that we all love and know that needs to be done right now. And this is one of the ways that I know how to contribute and can help. And so the process we're going to talk about was really created for our work documenting and helping others document with photos and videos and even audio rights violations. So human rights violations, evidence of war crimes, civil cases, anything where you have a picture of something and you want to make sure it's kept around as evidence. There's a chain of custody and there's no modification or manipulation that is introduced along the way. And so with all of the information in the news recently about data sets going offline and sites going away and knowledge being lost, I thought it would be important to share what we know about this. I first want to give full kind of support and shout outs to those who've been working away and preserving data in different ways, including some work by the Harvard Library Innovation Lab and others that really know about archiving and preservation. And I know that work is underway. This is maybe a little bit of a different approach and set of knowledge. And, the concern we've had is about servers going away, websites going away, and being reliant on cloud hosting. And so the technology that we've been using as part of our preserve process, and this idea of future-proofing the truth, is really meant to be almost a grassroots, ground-up approach to data preservation. And you can read about it again at proofmode.org/preserve, what we've done with some of our data sets for documentation of natural disaster, indigenous land rights movements, and even a year in the life of Cape Town, South Africa. What we want to do is teach other people how to replicate what we've done. And I'm going to do that today briefly, and then happy to follow up with anyone that wants to dig deeper. The approach that we use is building on decentralized web technologies, such as the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, and the related stack of Filecoin storage network. One of the reasons that we like IPFS is that it feels like, in some ways, just another protocol on the internet that should have existed all along. It is not inherently tied to kind of typical crypto hangups or complications, though the Filecoin part is clearly. But IPFS itself builds on both things like HTTP and BitTorrent as another example. And this is where the idea comes in for the value for right now. One thing that you can do with BitTorrent, and that is key to ensuring data is verifiable, is hashing, making sure that the bits are the same no matter where the copies exist and who's had them. and that you can make sure nothing's been changed while it's been stored somewhere. And so a lot of calls to like download data, copy data, all of that, I think in some ways are missing this process. Now, again, you can just use a M, sorry, a SHA-256, 512 hash tool and publish hashes, and that works. There's a lot of information on that, and you should do that. If you upload anything to the Internet Archive, archive.org, it will do hashing, and part of that data is there. The approach to IPFS that's important is that it's inherently there's no URL address to say, oh, here's the zip file of the data that I've downloaded. You find the data by essentially something called a content ID, which includes a hash. And you just say, I need the data that matches this hash. And you publish that hash. And then you know that what you're looking at is exactly what you expected and were told existed. So as an example, on our baseline website, there's documentation related to these events that I discussed. And so you can see in this documentation of a hurricane aftermath that we publish the hash of the data set, the content ID from IPFS, and that anyone can access this by pinning or copying that and know that it's exactly the same and has been not modified since we published this in 2023. So this diagram talks about this approach, and let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Let's see if I can zoom in even more. Zoom and enhance. There we go. The idea is that you start with a desktop node where you take a bunch of data and you add it to IPFS. And there's desktop tools, and I'll show those for making that easy. Once you have that, you can actually then give that PIN code to anyone else who runs the same IPFS desktop software, and they could join, the cloud, the peer-to-peer cloud, and pin that themselves. So you could get your whole supporters with their own computers and hard drives and to pin data and keep many copies of it. And you don't have to worry about long downloads. They just need to use the pin function, which is essentially, subscribing to a content ID. The next layer is that you can actually, above that, use some different cloud services like Firebase, Pinata. There's a bunch where you can actually go in and add the pin into a free account or a paid account, and it will be another node kind of keeping a copy of verifiably the same data. And then the third step is that you can take what you have locally, you can export it as a content archive file. It's kind of a fancy zip file. And then you can actually put that on the Filecoin Web3.storage, which is another decentralized storage grid with providers that are, all over in different networks and different systems. You can also take that CAR file and put it on a physical drive and put that in a bank or a basement or a church. And 10 years from now, you will be able to verifiably know it is the same file, the same bits, and nothing has been modified. So this process allows you to have this great, wonderful, resilient diversity of places of keeping the data safe, of many different people participating at grassroots level, different service providers, different grids, and kind of different price points and different costs. You could essentially do this all with just your own computers and supporters, but you can also, if you have funding, ensure that it exists on lots of different providers in different places while defending from a bad actor injecting bad data or modifying the data somehow or censoring the data somehow. And that's what's really important here. So again, on the post, you'll see all of the details. Here's we'll walk through the process. Here's a data set that I had from Cape Town of Big Bay, and I want to preserve this beautiful photos that there's waves, and this is how the air looked, and this is how the water looked on that day. So in this case, I created data essentially in a zip file where you have some other data, but you have a folder on your disk. You use the IPFS desktop application, which you can find and install, and you import that folder. And so there's some more links on that. So now that folder is running in like your local node. You're starting your peer-to-peer network, you're connecting to this IPFS grid. Your local node now has that in it, and you have a content ID. So it's pretty easy to pick a file or drop the file, and then you're published into the network. So that's step one. You can then, as I said, add commercial services that have 5 GB free plans, things like Filebase, Pinata, and those make it pretty easy to keep a backup copy of it. You can do that automatically. Others can also sign up for 5 GB free plans and do the same, and just have it be in a diverse set of accounts and places. So again, if I go back here, I'll get the pin. This is what a pin looks like. I mean, a content ID. I can go into something like Filebase. I can, go into some data here. I can upload via a CID, a content ID, and I can call this, test Big Bay surfers, Big Bay surfers, and it's going to then add that, right? So successfully queued pin. It found the pin. It's verified those bytes, and now I have a copy there. I can go to Pinata and I can add. It'll say import from IPFS. I can put a pin there. Big Bay search and pin, and it's now added into under pending pins, but it'll eventually show up in my bucket. So that's 2 examples of using those services. So that's now done. In your desktop, you'll see the pin, and you can choose there as well to pin, again, locally using that. So you can test this using command lines and different tools. And again, you can also give, there's public links. So using gateways, that same pin is available using an IPFS. And there's many gateways. There's lots of different gateways. That's the beauty, is people can access this through HTTP still through different lots of places, and not just one server that may be going offline or taken down or attacked. This is very important. You can then ask your friends to pin. So again, they can pin on a server they have somewhere at a school, in the cloud, a physical box. They can also pin, again, using their own Filebase free account, their own IPFS desktop computer. There's lots of ways that they can participate in that swarm, right? And that's a really great way to make people volunteer and feel like they're part of something without it being too difficult. Then, as I mentioned, having the ability to export all of this in a way that can be moved to the Filecoin network, but also kind of a physical backup, not only the files, but of the entire content ID and that sort of package. And so this is a little more technical, but you can export your content ID as a content archive file, and that can then be put on an external drive that is then put in another physically secure location and copied. That can later then be sort of reborn. Say everything else goes away, you can put it back into IPFS and Filecoin in the immutable form with the same content ID. So that is a way, kind of disaster proofing. And then you can now also upload to Web3.storage car files there if you want to have this whole other storage grid, which again has more decentralization and resilience. So there's a lot of options there, and the car file is kind of the way you move it between those networks. So here's an example of that. Yeah, so the idea that we have many copies of this essential data is very important. Um, Again, our baseline project partly is meant to do this for disaster relief, having evidence for years about buildings and places and people. Um, the work in Cape Town was a bit about around climate and culture and art and gentrification and documenting different parts of a very vibrant culture that also has been through a lot. Our work with an indigenous caravan project, El Sur Resiste, about land rights in indigenous communities and how you can use these in a legal process as well. And there's many other uses of this. And our goal again is how do we keep this around for, you know, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, 20 years beyond? This is one approach. So please check this out. We have the same kind of call to action here around, hey, do you like this data? You can help participate in making sure it exists and stays around. And again, through our preserve process, um, which is documented here, proofmode.org/preserve, then you can see that. So again, shout outs to others doing this work. I'm happy to provide pointers. You can reach me on various places, LinkedIn, YouTube, um, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Matrix, and Nathan at guardianproject.info. And I'm happy to follow up and provide more guidance on this work. And I think that's all for now. So, please take care of yourselves, take care of your data, find ways for your community, stay engaged, and you know, let's. There's a lot of negativity right now around technology, and rightly so. And techno utopianism is not what we're doing here. It's trying to find, value to do good and essential work and create things that people can trust and be reliable and resilient and that are transparent and open and that are not used to hide and obfuscate and gatekeep and um, change history and the past. So preserve proof immutably. We're here to help you do that. Thanks for checking in. And if there's any questions or comments, throw them in. Otherwise, you know where to find me. So thanks.